When I was little, I was born and my mother had me at church the next Sunday, so I never remember not knowing about God. But I had an older brother and sister, and they did not want to play with me. They were 5 and 7 years older, and every day when Mama would say, go out to play, by the time I got ready, they were gone. So I would get on my little tricycle, and I would ride back and forth across the porch, and at the top of my lungs, I would sing, Dear God, bring me a baby brother. Please, Lord, send me a baby brother. My mother said that in the house, she said, don't do it, Lord. Don't you do it, Lord. Well, when Mother announced that she was having my baby, I said, well, I don't know what we're going to name him. Were we going to name him David or Daniel? She said, why? I said, well, there's David and Goliath, and there's Daniel in the lion's den. And we came to the agreement that we would name my baby Daniel. And she said, and when you're grown, you can have a David. That was my first prayer that I remember distinctly praying and it being answered. And I loved my baby brother. And so when you start with that faith of a little child and your prayers are answered, there's things that don't go your way, but you know God's there. And so I'm going to fast forward like some of the Bible people say, and then I was riding in a car with my baby brother. We were in El Camino. We raced go-karts, and in the back was a go-kart. I'd been racing it with my younger brother and his friend Tony, and my brother was driving. We were on a 2-lane road, and there were rows of mailboxes. You know how you've seen them, where there's a little road and there's little roads, so you need to picture these mailboxes. We kept seeing them, and there was a transfer truck in front of us, and it was going real slow. And when Jimmy finally got a chance to pass it, and we got right up in the blind spot, the transfer truck decided to pass the car in front of him. And I could see the bolts on the tire turning just right in my face, just right at my window. And I said one word, God! And in that next instant, our El Camino was parked between 2 of those rows of mailboxes. There were no tire screeches. There was no smoke. There were no horns blaring. It was absolute dead silence. And we're sitting between those 2 rows of mailboxes. And I was up under my brother's armpit, and I looked at him. I said, do you see something? He went. And I said, are they round? He went. I said, are they shiny? Picture Lawrence Welk, all those bubbles at the end of the show. Y'all, we were surrounded by bubbles. They were everywhere. They glowed. So when people tell me that they haven't seen God or that the Spirit's not real, I can tell you, I have seen the light of the Lord and the bubbles. It surrounded us. I've never forgotten that moment, and I've carried that moment with me. I've actually had my Sunday school class vote on which things I should share with y'all. So I'm telling the 3 that came up at the top of the list. Because God is constantly in each of your lives. He's doing these things for you. We want to say they're coincidences. They're not. They're the Spirit in our lives. So the last one happened in the last few years. I own some property in Wake County, and I go up there and I cut an acre of land with a 22-inch push mower. And in case you wonder, that's about 17,000 steps. And I try to clean up and keep it nice and neat. But my neighbor thought when he pulled up his bushes, he should toss them over the fence on my side. Well, I burned them the first time. And the second time I went, they pulled up some more bushes. They put them over at the edge. And the man saw me and said, Miss Donna, I'm taking care of those. I'm going to fix them. The third time it happened, my temper was hot. I was angry. And I was headed to his door ready to shoot him. Let's just be honest. And I rapped on the door. Just loaded for bear. And he opened the door, and his hands were swollen double. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he said, I know there's bushes on your property. I said, can I pray for you? Y'all, I went over there ready to shoot that man. And I reached out and I took his hands and I prayed that they would be healed. Because I have eczema and my hands often hurt. I hurt for that man. And I prayed that the Spirit would go over him and his hands would be healed. The next day I got a text. It said, my hands are well. God's still in the business of doing miracles. I did nothing for this man. I prayed for him. But when I held his hands, I could feel the heat run through my arm. He still does this. If you're a doctor, you've seen it. If you're a mama, you've seen it. If you're a daddy, you've seen it. He's healing, and he's with us.